Okay, Senator, I think we will just need a motion to waive the quorum requirement.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
We have a
Second.
motion and
Second.
a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Quorum requirement is waived. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. Lana Tice from the beautiful state of Michigan. Appreciate all of you taking the time today, legislators taking the time out of your busy day, and those interested parties coming on and giving us your thoughts. I'm very, very grateful for that. I hope everyone had a terrific weekend. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct some business before our summer meeting in Boston next month. I knew there was going to be a lot to do and that we wouldn't be able to get it all done in the time frame we have, so I appreciate you all taking the time to do this. Today, we're going to be continuing a discussion on the proposed amendments on the NCOIL Model Act to regulate insurance requirements for the Transportation Network Company and Transportation Network drivers. We're going to have a discussion on the NCOIL Model Act regarding insurers' use of aerial images. And we're going to be taking any comments on the models scheduled for readoption in Boston. Again, I'll ask you to mute if you are not going to be speaking immediately. Is there an echo in mine? Or like I'm seeing a note in the comment section, there's a significant echo. And are you guys hearing me okay without the echo? I see heads nodding. All right, fantastic. This meeting will be to help ensure we move through the agenda in a timely manner this summer. So let's get started. We're going to start with the continued discussion on the proposed amendments to the NCOIL TNC Model Act. There's been significant dialogue and comments have gone through with these amendments, with this committee having 2 hearings on them at our national meetings. The goal of today's meeting is to take final comments on the amendments so that the committee is prepared to vote on them at our summer meeting. We've had extensive discussions on these amendments. Both I and the sponsor believe that they can be ready for a vote in Boston. Today will be a good opportunity to gather final thoughts on the issue and use them to guide our discussions in advance of Boston. With that, I'd like to turn things over to the sponsor of the amendments, Mississippi Senator Walter Michel. Senator Michel, can you go ahead and discuss your amendments with us?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I sure will. This model that we have before us has been one of NCOIL's most successful. And since the model was adopted approximately 10 years ago, these amendments are proposed to address changes in the transportation network company landscape and update our model. And we've seen bills introduced in states that include many of these amendments that you see before you. So our update to this model is very timely. The amendments clarify the liability among the TNC and the TNC driver, and I appreciate the time that the P&C committee has devoted to this issue. NCOIL has a policy of amending and approving our models, and these become a framework for states to amplify as they deem best for their state. Thank you for bringing this issue before us today, Madam Chair. I look forward to discussion and hopefully bringing this model to the finish line at our meeting next month in Boston. And I'll be glad to yield back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Let's see. Before I open this up to other legislators, are there any interested parties that would like to speak? If so, use the hand emoji on the Zoom feature, and we'll call on you as we see the hands come up. Brad, it appears your hand went up first. Brad Nail, go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It took me a second to find the hand raise again, but I did find it.
I lose it every time as well.
Yeah. I appreciate the time. I think, Madam Chair, you and Senator Michel recapped the committee activity on this so far. As we came out of the last hearing that we had, we wanted to note that APCIA had noted some discomfort with the period 2, and I'm going to go through each of the amendments just quickly for the committee again. But we know that APCIA had noted some discomfort with the period 2 change, and that there'd been some concern from the trial lawyers around the vicarious liability language. So I want to spend just a little bit of time on that. And then coming out of that committee, there were some questions from a couple of members of the committee just around the safety programs that are in place and how those work beyond just imposition of liability. And so I did prepare a few slides to cover that for the members. But to review the proposed amendments, And I think Senator Michelle touched on this. These reflect changes that have already been made in at least one state, but mostly in several states for each of these proposed amendments. The first one is a change in the definition that clarifies that the application is not a product subject to product liability laws, which is consistent with the laws in most every state. The second amendment is around the period 2 limits. And just as a reminder for the folks that don't deal with this every day, that there are 3 periods of operation as defined in the model and defined in your statutes. The period 1 is when the driver has logged onto the app and made him or herself available to provide a ride, but have not received that ride or accepted that ride request yet. Period 2 is when they've accepted the ride request and are on the way to pick someone up, and that's the period that's in subject to discussion here. Period 3 is when they have rider or riders in the vehicle. And the model and most of the state laws right now tie the limits required for period 2 to be the same as those required for period 3, which in the model is $1 million. The proposed amendment would tie it to the period 1 limit, which is the 5,125 split limits. We believe that because there are no passengers in the vehicle, that it is more, the risk profile is more akin to the period 1 and that's appropriate. The third amendment is an addition of an independent contractor test, which does reflect what several of the states have now and clarifies that. And then the fourth amendment is around vicarious liability. The intent of this amendment is to address vicarious liability for auto accident claims in situations where the company is sued not because of its own negligence or misconduct, but simply because it operates the app and is viewed as the deepest pocket. And also joining us here, Madam Chair, joining us in the meeting is Scott Jalowick, who's a director of complex litigation for Uber and deals with this issue in litigation all the time. And I was hoping we could give him a minute or two to discuss the experience there.
Sure. I'm looking through my notes and I see APCA has submitted on the aerial imaging, but I don't see anything about the TNC model. So can you ensure that we receive that documentation, your commentary?
I see Bob Passmore has his hand raised, so I think he'll address that.
Okay. Go ahead.
If it's okay, Madam Chair, if Scott can go ahead and discuss.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Great, and thank you, and I want to thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today because it's an important issue for our company. And to be clear, an entire cottage industry has developed across the nation in suing TNCs, and it's really a national problem meriting national consistency. It's impossible to miss the billboards, right? If you're coming to Philly or Atlanta or Los Angeles, if you step off the plane at LAX, you're going to see billboards saying "Sue Uber." And we'll give you a $5,000 cash advance. So we at Uber see almost 1,000 lawsuits a year, and the vast majority of those don't allege that Uber did anything wrong. And that's what this amendment is really aiming to address. It's a proliferation of unnecessary and abusive lawsuits that are ultimately driving up costs for consumers. Because we maintain at least $1 million in liability coverage for every trip. So it's even more in places like New York and New Jersey. Yet we're regularly sued and have to defend cases that ultimately settle well within that limit, right? So we have plenty of examples where we're going to spend $100,000 to defend a case that settles for $15,000 out of the insurance policy. It's completely unnecessary. We'll be sued when a driver even wasn't even on the app at the time of the accident. We'll be sued just because a driver has an Uber sticker on the back of the car. You know, a case in Philly is a perfect example of the sort of meritless litigation that we're seeing. A drunk driver was speeding over 100 miles an hour, running multiple red lights before finally slamming into the back of an Uber. Uber got sued. Uber got sued for vicarious liability in that case. And these costs are not trivial. So abusive litigation is driving up insurance costs, which means higher trip costs for consumers. And higher trip costs for consumers ultimately mean less earning opportunities for drivers because people are going to take fewer trips. And so this amendment is a targeted solve for a widespread problem. And I want to be very, very clear. The amendment does not affect a TNC's own independent negligence. If a TNC contributed to somebody's injuries, it will still be fully accountable. And I want to reiterate what Brad said, that the intent of the amendment is to address relationship-based liability for auto accident claims in situations where the company is not sued because of our own negligence or misconduct, but because we're operating an app and reviewed as the debit pocket. That'll pass it back to Brad.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, as I mentioned, after the last committee meeting, there were some questions around just the broader safety programs, and I think a couple of members thought it would be helpful to have a quick overview of the safety programs associated with TNCs. I prepared a few slides here just to demonstrate some of these. I will try to share now. Okay. So what I want to just briefly show you is how we invest in innovative technologies, robust policies, and expert partnerships that prioritize safety throughout the journey. The goal is to keep users safe. And our safety features and our services are informed by our users, by expert safety partners, and developed by a robust internal team dedicated to keeping riders and drivers safe. Now, this slide will probably be the most interesting in that it shows a bit of a timeline on how this is developed, and it continues to develop. If you look at the far left, driver background screenings are required. Every driver has to pass a background screening. It's both criminal and driver history. And in most, I think in every case, the requirements of that are set forth in your statutes. That was part of the process that we went through in passing the TNC bills in each state, where you, the legislature, laid out these are going to be the minimum qualifications for someone to drive on one of these apps. And then there's an annual background check rerun and continuous monitoring for any new incidents, convictions, anything like that that would put their eligibility into question. So that's the very bedrock of this, is that the drivers are screened in advance. Then as we look at the second column around the different features that have developed over time, since the very beginning, the GPS tracking, I think, has been one of the most profound. Because if you think about it, I remember having these discussions 12 years ago, and the comparison was to a taxi where you just raise your hand on the street and you just get in, and nobody knows who you are, who the driver is, what car it is, where you're going, where you are, anything like that. And the GPS allows us to know who the driver is, what the vehicle is, who the passenger is, and where you are at any point in time. And that alone provides a substantial amount of safety. The two-way ratings and feedback system have proven themselves to be influential in driving behavior among the participants. If we look at 2016, I won't go through every single one of these, but if we look at 2016, trip sharing for riders and drivers is a very good feature. Anytime you're a rider, you can share the trip with anyone you want, and they can follow you along the way and see where you are at any given point in time. And if you look at 2018, the addition of the emergency button in the app to immediately address any issues that might arise during the trip. The rapid SOS integration, that's a third-party vendor that integrates and allows communication with law enforcement in real time. The ride check function, which is if there's any deviation from what's expected on the ride, it essentially sends a message to make sure everything's okay. The address anonymization is an excellent tool for maintaining privacy. If we look at 2019, the check your ride notifications and the PIN verification, these are ways to make sure people are getting in the right car and not getting in the wrong car. We see incidents sometimes where someone gets in a car that is not even an Uber, but they thought it was. And the PIN is an excellent way to do it. If you haven't used that yet, you can set that up, and basically you have to tell the driver your 4-digit PIN, and they enter it into their app, and that's how you know that you're connected with the right person. The text to 911 feature was added. In 2021, importantly, audio recording. As a rider, you can have the entire trip audio recorded for your safety. And then in 2022, the Record My Ride, which expands to both audio and video for the driver and audio for the rider, and the live help from ADP safety agents was added. And then last year we were able to add the women preferences, where women riders can select can match with women drivers, because I think that's something that there's enough of a population there that feels that that's important, that we want to make that available. The 24/7 support there is available. There are, as it notes here, 10 different ways to report incidents that are happening both live and after the fact.
So they're talking.
Now, the safety toolkit in your app, it's prominently displayed while you're on the trip, a big blue badge right there. And that's how you access all of these tools in one place. So you can set up either in advance, or you can access these tools while you're on the ride. It is largely customizable. You can pick what is most important for you. You can choose to automatically turn on features based on time or location, such as turning on a pin in the evenings. You can set up safety preferences through your settings and through the app at any time. And the feedback and reporting, if help is needed, the live assistance is available easily within the app, and that continues to improve over time as well. And then lastly, globally, nearly 1 in 3 women will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. It is not an issue that is limited to TNCs, but we try to implement programs to ensure safety. These are just a few of them. There is a lot more to talk about, but I know time is valuable. And anyone who wants really a lot more details can go to uber.com/safety and can see that in a lot greater detail. So I would just say, just to close, Madam Chair, that we feel confident that the proposed amendments are positive changes. They've already been adopted in several states, Texas, Florida, Georgia, among others, and that the model language should be amended to reflect them as well. And so I'll wrap up there. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Brad. When you say proposed amendments, are they amendments proposed by you, or the ones that are currently showing in our model?
The ones currently
model?
under consideration, filed by Senator Michelle.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Bob, you're up.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to see if I can lower my hand here. I was with you all in Louisville, and I'm really going to reiterate what our comments were there. Most of the proposed changes, we're fine with. Revising the definition of digital network, TNC driver, or clarification of application. Those were all fine, but we still have concerns about the changes to the activity periods. I'm going to correct my friend Brad, and no state has implemented changes to the activity periods. There have been some bills introduced in a couple of states, but no state has implemented that yet. As we talked about in Louisville, our association has been, we were part of the original stakeholders that developed this, and we've worked very closely with the TNCs to get it developed, to get it rolled out in the states. And I would definitely agree with the sponsor who said up front, this has been probably a wildly successful, the most wildly successful model that NCOIL has. And it's been, the primary goal was to make sure that we had a clear set of insurance requirements to separate the commercial exposure of carrying passengers for hire and avoid gaps in coverage that could result in disputes. And it's been very successful in doing that. As I talked about in Louisville, there's a big difference in how drivers behave when they're actually engaged to heading to pick up a passenger who could cancel that ride, at any time within those first 5 minutes. So, and companies also currently offer endorsements that sort of wrap around the coverage that's provided by the TNC. So any change, I guess I'm not talking about changing the definitions of the different periods. I'm talking about changing the limits that apply to them. I know Brad just put something in the chat. And North Dakota did change how the names of each period and how they're described, but they didn't change the actual limits. Companies that they offer those endorsements to wrap around, obviously that would have to change. We understand the reason for the proposed change, that we would agree that TNCs have become a prime target for legal system abuse, and we'll work closely with Uber in particular on those efforts. But that also contributes to the uncertainty around changing the limits that are applicable to those activity periods, and probably make some target for disputes, which is the whole point of the model, is to avoid those disputes. So we're happy to support all the changes except for the change in the limits applicable to the different time periods. But we also are happy to continue to talk with Uber and Lyft to better understand their exposure in this period, and of course work with them on addressing legal system abuse as well. Thanks, and I'll answer any questions.
So do any are there any more comments from non-legislators on this proposed model? All right, legislators, you are open for comments. Do you have questions for our non-legislators, or do you just have comments for regarding the model? Is this Brenda? Brenda Carter put something in the chat. She says, in states with no fault systems like Michigan, is there anything in this model that could affect PIP priority? And Brenda, I would say yes. Actually, there's a prohibition from changing the priority in the way that I see that Michigan should. But obviously, it's a model act, and we can affect that separately should we choose to. Does anybody else have a comment with respect to that?
If I may, Madam Chair, no, I think the answer is that the changes here do not affect no fault priority.
I would agree.
The changes would prohibit us from causing the way the language is written is fairly generic, and it could be interpreted to mean that you can't list someone's individual insurance as the top in the priority, as opposed to somebody's personal auto insurance. So the way that it's written is I think not clear enough. So I've specifically asked some of our insurers that are very familiar with the no fault system to take a look at it and see if there's something we ought to look at differently on that.
Madam Chair, I do, Representative Pollock, in regards to the limits of PIP, I'll go ahead and take it an extra step with the underlying coverages of uninsured, underinsured, and what those limits, would any of these amendments affect those type of limits, particularly in, I guess, period 3?
If I may, I answer, Madam Chair. The answer, Representative Pollock, is no. The only limit that is changed by the proposed amendments is the period 2 liability limit.
Thank you.
Is there any further comment?
Madam Chair, I see that in the chat, Representative Jordan had a question about an amendment or potential amendment changing the gross negligence standard to negligence. If anyone would want to comment on that.
And look, this is Edmund. Look, I think I heard in the discussion someone saying the TNC was going to be held responsible for their negligence. But I know, and I'm driving right now, so I apologize. But I remember in the amendments that I read, it spoke of gross negligence and criminal activity. It didn't speak of negligence itself. So I was just curious about that.
May I respond?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Representative Jordan, I know after our discussion at the last NCOIL, we've been bouncing that around, and I think we have a better way of explaining it, and also some potential language that we can run by you that we would include. But I'd like to have an offline discussion with you, maybe, to make sure it does what you want it to do.
That's fine. So I assume that the answer is gross negligence is still in there, but yeah, we can have that offline conversation. I don't need to tie this meeting up in that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify the comments I made were not with respect to amendments that were being proposed, but existing language already in the model about regarding order of priority. Are there any other comments or concerns? Right, so we've covered everything from the interested parties, legislators. Is there anything new? All right, thank you, everyone. Senator Michelle, do you have any closing remarks?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I would just say that I think the limited number of changes that we've made on this are going to keep the bill simple, the Model Act, simple, where states could amend it to suit their needs should they desire. And I'm very happy and want to thank the members of the committee for the time you put forward on this.
It's obvious that some people have seriously dug in. We're very grateful for that. Thank you, Senator, and thanks for everyone that commented today. I'm confident we'll be able to end this in a good place. We'll be ready for this in Boston. If you have any concerns, questions, changes, please reach out to Senator Michelle, myself, or NCOIL staff. And we'll be better prepared when we get to Boston. Next on our agenda is a continued discussion of the NCOIL Model Act regarding insurers' use of aerial images, sponsored by Indiana Representative Matt Lehman and Ohio Representative Brian Lampton, and co-sponsored by Texas Representative Matt Morgan. Just as a reminder, the committee has discussed this topic extensively for over a year. Ultimately, the model that we were working on was narrowly voted down. However, after that happened, several legislators expressed interest in taking another go at this issue. We agree that it's a very important one and that it's not going away. Bills continue to be introduced across the country, and two of them were recently signed into law. One of those bills is from Indiana. At our spring meeting, Representative Lehman announced his intent to introduce a new model based on the Indiana law he sponsored. So today we'll get some initial feedback on the model before discussing it further at our Boston meeting. With that, I'll turn things over to Representative Lehman. Representative Lehman, are you available to chat with us?
Okay, am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
There we go.
Welcome.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I apologize. I'm not on video, but I'm laying here with 3 rods in my back from 4 days ago, or 3 days ago. So if you hear me wandering off into the wonderland somewhere, I think you can just turn me off and I'll go from there. But I think what I want to touch base on here is, first of all, I want to thank Representative Lampton, Representative Morgan for joining me on this. I do want to give a shout out to Representative LaBeouf. He kind of got this thing started, led the effort last year, got a lot of discussion going. We're just going to get across the finish line. So I think this is such an emerging issue that I think carriers are going to begin to use more and more. So I'm proud to sponsor this model. I think it's a very important issue. It's worth our committee continuing discussion. As I mentioned our April meeting, this is a model is based off of what we passed in Indiana, and I think it's pretty straightforward in Indiana. It took the NCOIL model, made a few changes to it, necessarily got it to where everybody could be on board with passing this. I know that hasn't gotten everybody in their same place, and opinions are changing, and there's some things we need to continue to look at. But I think that we do have an opportunity again to bring this back and have a robust discussion. Because I do think there's a couple things around the time periods or age of photos. I know there's some that are concerned about the sole reason for the non-renewal. And I think there's other pieces. I know an entity brought forth some questions about the quality of the photograph. Should there be a certain quality of the matrix? So I think that there's a lot of stuff out there that we're just again going to get a good start on. I know Georgia, I think, just recently passed one that went a little farther than Indiana. I like what they did. So I think this timing is right. Hopefully we can have a good discussion today about some of these pieces that are maybe still need some tweaking or some changing. And then we'll see where we're at in Boston. If we can get it across the finish line. If not, we'll get it done by the fall. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you and try to answer any questions people might have.
Representative Lehman, I just want to tell you how impressed I am that you've actually made it onto the call in the situation that you're in. Oh my gosh, I hope you have an amazing and complete healing in a very fast way. Thank you
There's
for,
a lot of logistics going on here.
yeah, no kidding.
Get that done. So thank you,
Well,
everybody.
thank you. So interested parties on this proposed legislation. I know historically we've had a lot of opinions. We're open to hearing what you have to say about the proposed model that's set before us today. Any interested parties, please put your hand up so that we can.
I'm trying.
It's okay, Amy. I saw your hand go up. We'll just
I'm
call
trying
on
to
you.
find the right
That's
thing
okay.
when it's my turn.
Amy, you go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this work stream. And I just had the occasion last week to do a continuing ed presentation for a commercial outfit that does continuing ed for lawyers. And so I had Krista with NCOIL kindly shared with me an account of all the different state bulletins. I added a few, and we have now taken a look at the way that states are moving forward on this issue. We were very pleased to work with your membership over the last couple of years, and disappointed that it didn't we didn't get to the finish line, and happy to keep helping. So in the interim, since our discussions, as Representative Lehman just mentioned, there have been a couple more state laws. There's one that seems like it's on the edge of possibly passing in California, and then there have been, by my count, 14 bulletins. So we have got a lot of meat, and things do seem to be continuing to move. So the quality of the images seems to consistently be getting much better, especially with the manned drones. It seems like between whether you can use the age of the images that should be legit continues to be a point of some disagreement, but I think it's really seems logical that it either be no older than 12 months or no older than 6 months. So as the tech becomes cheaper for insurers to buy, it's clear that more and more, if not all, insurers are eventually going to be using this technology. It's getting cheaper for them. It's getting more granular and all those things. But we still have this goal that I would love to see the membership pursue of establishing a model that gives the consumer the information that they need to know that if there's a flaw in their property, and then gives them an opportunity to correct it so that they can hold on to their insurance. So with that said, I am available to your members. I look forward to participating in the meeting in July. I shared the PowerPoint that I put together with an insurance defense lawyer for this program last week. I shared it with Will. My organization, United Policyholders, is at your disposal to be useful in this endeavor. And thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate your comments. I understand your concerns about the time frame. My concerns and my pushback in the prior model legislation was that we have an area in the entire northern part of Michigan that has very low population and would thereby receive very few flyovers. And I would hate to limit an insurance company beyond what is available to them. And so until we get to a point where that is more ubiquitous, I'm going to push back on that. I appreciate your thoughts, but I'm going to push back on that. Bob?
Yeah, well, one of my colleagues was going to speak today, Joe Roth, but he's unfortunately taken ill. We sent some comments earlier. We think we think you've taken some positive steps on the model, and we offered some suggestions that were in an email I think that was sent to staff on Friday. So we think that will help address any of the some of the remaining issues that we had. But happy to keep answer any questions. I won't be able to answer any questions about it, but if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to get my colleagues involved and make sure we get the right information to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for anybody who has comments, if you could please ensure that they are put onto a document and sent to NCOIL staff, will ensure that they're accessible to all of the legislators for them to be able to make their determinations. And thank you very much for your comments. Wes.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. I'm Wes Bissett, Senior Counsel with the Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of America, the Big I. I appreciate you, the committee, and NCOIL in general for continuing to consider this issue. We think this is a very timely and necessary proposal. I'm going to talk a little bit towards the end about what we view as a small but fatal flaw in this particular new draft. But for the most part, from a big picture perspective, we appreciate the work you're doing. The use of aerial images obviously has tremendous benefits, but what we've seen in the marketplace is that their use has been bumpy at times. We've seen insurers reach conclusions that are frankly faulty, and as a result, as Amy I think accurately noted, we have seen state policymakers begin to act in this area. Indiana acted, Georgia with the bill sponsored by NCOIL member and State Senator Larry Walker. Georgia acted this session with a very strong bill, and actually I see Senator Walker's got his hands up. I don't want to steal his thunder talking about his law, but that's a great model. But what we need, I think, and what NCOIL can provide is greater guidance and promote interstate consistency. I think from the Big I's perspective, what we would hope to get out of a model in this area are three things. First, the notion that if images are going to be used in whole or in part to cancel or to non-renew someone's insurer, that policymaker, that homeowner have the ability to access those images, right? It's important for the homeowner to be able to actually see the problem that's been alleged and ensure that the photos are accurate. So for example, being able to make sure that we're talking that, the photos are of the correct property in its current state. Second, there ought to be an ability to challenge an insurer's allegations if they're not correct or there's some sort of misunderstanding. You ought to be able to make your case. That seems like common sense. And then third, there ought to be an opportunity to address and remedy the problems that the insurer has identified. So if a company's about to non-renew your homeowner's insurance for a particular reason, then the consumer ought to have a reasonable period of time, not an unlimited period of time, but a reasonable period of time to remedy that issue. And so we appreciate you taking this up again. During the consideration and discussion of this issue last year, there were lots of changes and revisions that were made along the way. I think the big issue, though, that hung this up at the end when you considered it in the fall was this question of whether insurers, in every instance in which someone is non-renewed because of the use of their aerial image, whether the insurer would have to proactively share that with them in every instance, or whether the insurer would only have to provide it if that homeowner was interested and requested a copy of it. That was ultimately the linchpin. And what our view is that if it, in an effort to get this over the finish line, what we said last year, and I'll say again today, is we would not object to moving towards an upon request type of framework. I think Representative Lampton had an amendment to that effect last year that wasn't considered, but this updated proposal would put that kind of framework into place, and we don't object to that again if it helps push this over the finish line. We are troubled, though, by one small, more subtle change that has been incorporated into this draft, potentially inadvertently. And that's a provision that says that the requirements and protections that are now in this draft would only apply when the use of aerial imagery is the, quote, sole reason, unquote, for the non-renewal. And the reality is that insurers weigh a variety of factors anytime they make any kind of this. We all weigh a bunch of factors anytime we make any decision. And so it's hard to think up a scenario in which an aerial image would be the absolute only reason, right? 100% of the reason why an action was taken. And so our fear is that you'd have a model if it included such a limitation that in practical terms would never apply any of its requirements because no insurers ever making a determination 100% based only on the aerial image. So we would urge NCOIL to kind of clean that particular issue up so that the requirements would apply if the non-renewal was based in whole or in part on the review of an aerial image, or to sort of say it in a different way, that the non-renewal would not have occurred but for the review and consideration of the aerial image. I suspect that that's what the sponsors actually intended, and it's a far more not just appropriate and fair, but also objective approach to take. So in conclusion, I'll mention three things. I want to emphasize our support for NCOIL continuing to look at this issue and our appreciation of this committee. Second, express our continued willingness to not oppose reasonable revisions to this proposal, including the move to a framework where homeowners would actually have to request their images which was the major topic of discussion in the fall. And then third, express our strong opposition to this sort of subtle tweak that was this sole reason language. In our view, it's such a poison pill that we would almost urge you to adopt no model before you adopted a model that included that text in there, because it would just be an empty proposal at that point. So appreciate the opportunity to comment. I was not as coherent as a recent Matt Lehman back surgery patient, but I hope my comments made some degree of sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Russ. I'm going to actually go to Representative Lampton next. He's a co-sponsor on this and was just mentioned by Wes. I didn't anticipate that he'd be on the call, but he is, and I'm very grateful for his presence. Representative, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have too much to add to what Representative Lehman communicated. I feel this is an important issue, and that's why I was a sponsor from the original model. Ultimately, I just ended up not being comfortable with last year's model. I think it would have had some unintended consequences, and I'm quite pleased with the new version that Representative Lehman has put together. It eases a lot of my concerns. And so, once again, it's something that I would like to see NCOIL continue discussion about and move forward this opportunity. Again, thank you for letting me be involved here. Now, at this very moment, I have to walk into a committee here in Ohio, so I'm going to have to drop the rest of the call, but to wish everyone success and looking forward to seeing everyone in Boston.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Let everybody at the committee know we said hi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Paul Martin, we'd like to have you next.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. Paul Martin, National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies. We're still socializing the draft and getting feedback from members. We will have feedback for NCOIL legislators and staff later on this month, certainly well in advance of the Boston meeting. Let me say, I want to appreciate and let Representative Lehman know that we really appreciate the changes. What I'm calling aerial imaging 2.0, the version we're looking at today, is a significant change and improvement, we think, over last year's version. So this has come a long way, and we really appreciate a lot of the changes we've seen. There still remains some tension in the current version, the 2.0 version, between subsections D and E, where the insurer is permitted to inspect the work to cure the defects, identify the image, but then in subsection E, the policy can only be non-renewed for reasons unrelated to the defects found in the images. We think that can be solved with some very minor word tweaking to get that piece resolved. And then the other piece of this, it stems from situations where things are just not curable. You have incurable things you find that's completely outside of the policyholder's control, and that really comes in a space of where you have wildfire concerns, where areas beyond the property line of the policyholder, for whatever reason, are unmanaged fuel for wildfires, things like that. And we can have some conversations about that. I don't know that was intended when you have a situation where the problem is not curable by the policyholder, but we think that needs to be addressed somewhere along the way. So we'll be providing some feedback on this, and we really appreciate the work on this by legislators, because we think this is a vastly improved version from what we saw last year. So thank you very much.
So, Paul, I actually have a question, because the way I read the language, it says if they've proven they cured the issue that you were canceling them over, then you have to have another issue if you're going to cancel them. So can you help me understand why that's not how that reads?
Yes, I'm sorry, I've got too many things up. Let me see if I can find the bill again. I apologize. I wasn't expecting to get questions on wording. Give me 30 seconds to get back to that.
Of course. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. We're on section 5E, correct? Subsection E. Correct. Offer a renewal policy to named insured who submits proof that they have cured the defects or condition. The question is whether or not they cure it to the satisfaction of the insurance company. If I cure the defect, but I didn't do a workmanlike job, did I really cure the defect? I think that's the distinction. The language in D, in theory, I think infers that, but we just want to make it clear that if the work is done, and if the insurance company says you need to put on a new roof, and they put on a new roof and the roof is done well, then the problem is solved, right? And I think we would all agree on that. The problem comes when there's not any language in E that suggests that the workmanship has to be done in a correct manner, although you're giving them the ability to review that in subsection D.
Correct. My concerns with language that required some sort of professional to do the job is that there are many of us do-it-yourselfers who do at least as good a job as the professionals, and language to that effect was problematic.
Sure. To be clear, it doesn't necessarily have to be done by a certified professional, depending on what the thing is. If the matter is cutting your trees back from your property, well, a lot of people can do that. So it's just a matter of, did the work get done in a way that the insurance company has requested that it be done? I mean, I think that's in terms of, who does the work or how it's done. I don't know that we have to be that specific, but at the end of the day, there needs to be some sort of assurances that if you do the repairs, that they are done in a way that meet the requirements for underwriting.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Next, we have Senator Walker.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to commend Representative Lehman for continuing the discussion on this and for trying to move this forward. We have passed, I think, a good and fair and balanced and strong aerial imagery bill in Georgia that I carried in the Senate. This is technology is changing our industry, whether it be AI or aerial imagery or things I probably don't even know is happening. And I'm all for the industry having these kind of tools at their disposal to be more efficient and cost effective, and hopefully be able to provide better coverage, better rates, take care of our policyholders. I've been an independent agent for 30 years, and this issue with aerial imagery started popping up in Georgia about 4 years ago, probably maybe 5, but became a real crisis in certain parts of our state where just big swaths and big portions of carriers' books of business was being non-renewed, homeowners insurance non-renewed, and using aerial imagery as the basis for the non-renewal and not providing the policyholder with any further information than that, really. I mean, if they would call and ask, they'd say, well, your roof is discolored, or you're missing some shingles, or you've got a tree limb growing over your roof. In Georgia, anyway, the insurance market has been so hard and tight and difficult after Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Helene, more and more severe weather, that a non-renewal on your homeowner's insurance is incredibly serious. I mean, you can't just run out there and easily replace the coverage. So it puts the policyholder or my constituent in a really, really tough financial predicament where they may end up having to just pay the mortgage company for whatever coverage they can get through the mortgage company, which is only really protecting the mortgage company. So we did pass some very strong tort reform in Georgia in 2025. We're already starting to see positive results from that. So we did a lot of the things the insurance companies have asked us to do, but at the same time, I expect the insurance companies to be transparent and be fair with our policyholders and consumers, and not hide the ball or move the goalpost when they say you need to replace your roof. The policyholders replaces the roof, and they have another reason then to non-renew them. So I think our bill is strong. Aerial imagery has to be a basis for the non-renewal. It doesn't have to be the sole basis. And then it provides a mechanism for the policyholder to remedy the situation and provide documentation to the carrier and hopefully be reinstated. But I think you're going to see these bills pass in states across the country. And if NCOIL is going to continue to be relevant and we don't address this emerging issue with try to have some sort of uniformity or a model bill, then I think we're missing an opportunity to give some uniformity to this legislation as it's rolled out across the country. And I think that's kind of one of the main points of NCOIL. Obviously, each state, if they, Madam Chair, your example of, I think, Michigan, our time frame, our date we landed on was 12 months. So the image has to be 12 months not older than 12 months. And it's got to be date stamped. And the insurance company's they by statute in Georgia have to send a non-renewal to the policyholder. And when they send the non-renewal, they're supposed to now provide either a copy of the image that they're using as the basis for the non-renewal, or information on how the policyholder can access the image online. I don't think that's too big of a burden to put on the insurance companies. And so that I just think NCOIL needs to get something in a model form that states can use. And in Michigan, you can make it 18 months if you wanted to, or 2 years if you wanted to. If you've got a lot of rural area and they only pass over those properties, every 2 years or whatever. So obviously each state's going to modify it to their particular situation, but I would love to see NCOIL move on this.
Thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate your commentary. I don't think anybody disagrees that this is extremely important and we should be passing model legislation. It's just there are points of conflict. We want to make sure we get it right. And I thank you very much for your commentary. Amy, I see that you commented in our comment stream that you hadn't properly identified yourself. So given that you've already spoken, I'm going to read what you had to say. You said you're with United Policy Holders, a nonprofit insurance consumer organization, is who you represent. And you apologized for not stating that first. So thank you very much. I appreciate that clarification. Representative LaBeouf?
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Representative Lehman for bringing this forward. And I hope you have a really speedy recovery, and hope to see you doing well when all of you come to Boston in the next couple of months. Just want to add some quick commentary on this. I'm very pleased that we're still discussing the issue. It's something that we've been dealing with in my state. A bill that I introduced is advanced to the next stage that was more similar to the earlier bill that we had introduced. And I just want to add one commentary, particularly around the photos. I don't want to say it's a concern, but just my observation is we want to make sure that for consumers that the process of accessing those photos is consistent. And because if it isn't, and there isn't a clear process created, it's going to cause a lot of complaints and burden on our divisions of insurance. So the example I want to give is, in Massachusetts, there are some companies that give the photos right away when they have the non-renewals, and then there are others that don't. And so it's on the burden of the consumer to get access to that. Especially in states that have the shorter periods of non-renewal where it's only 30 days. If you get the non-renewal notice, you call within 5 days of the non-renewal, and then you don't get the photos until day 25. You're not going to be able to actually cure anything within 5 days, or actually identify those issues if it's the incorrect information. So just something to consider as we're moving forward is whether it's allowing our insurance commissioners to set up that process to make sure that it's consistent, given that they are likely to be getting those complaints, or some rulemaking process to make sure that that's done. But I think that it's great that we're continuing this conversation, and really appreciate the comments of the rest of my colleagues on this call. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. I see Amy still has her hand up, so I assume she's got more to say.
I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Just briefly, Representative LaBeouf raised really one of the 2 points I wanted to make. which is, and I think there was sort of a parallel effort to encourage all states to go that are still at a 30-day non-renewal notice to go to 60. But I think the reason that my organization keeps pushing on making it that if the insurer has the image in a digital form, that it should just provide it with the notice of adverse action. So it's just right there and the person has it. If there's a way to give them the either or, it's not the end of the world. But I think his point about giving this information to them in a quick enough time that it's going to actually be useful is a really good point. I also want to echo what Wes Bissett said, which is if we're going to have that loophole that this only applies if it's the sole reason, really, I don't think it's worth the effort of trying to get this model through because, as he said, it's never going to be solely on that anyway. So I appreciate that comment, and I really do hope that we can put something together that addresses your concern about the age, but also is realistic that at the end of the day, we want the property owner to have access to whatever information is relevant to their property and the condition of their property so that they can actually do something about it. And I do appreciate all the continued attention on this matter so that we don't end up with 51 different versions. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I don't see any more interested parties wanting to speak. Are there any more legislators who'd like to speak? For the record, you put your hand up by clicking on the heart down at the bottom, not the arrow next to it, but the heart itself, and then there's a raised hand button. Okay, I don't see any more. Representative Lehman, do you have any closing remarks?
No, just thank you. Thank you, everybody. Like I said, I know we have I think we're going to get there. I like everybody's opinions. I think this technology is one we've really got to get a handle on, and then this will parlay into the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So, looking forward to moving this forward. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Representative. Thanks to everyone for your comments. And if you made comments, please put them on paper and get them to us so that we can get those out to everybody. We are recording, but it makes it easier for us if we have your comments all put together in one place. So if you have any questions or concerns, please be sure to reach out to the sponsors, myself, or NCOIL staff for any questions you might have on the model. Next, we have an opportunity for comment and discussion on the model laws scheduled for readoption in this upcoming summer meeting. And if you've read through all of the models to be readopted, I'm very impressed with you. I'm just going to say that right now because some of them are kind of long and I appreciate it. Appreciate the thought and effort. We readopt every 5 years. If not, they sunset. So I love that myself that it would sunset, but for readoption, it gives us a chance to look closely at all of the models again. I hope that these models will not be voted on for readoption today. That's not my plan. My plan is for us to do that in Boston and merely for us to discuss them today if there are any concerns or questions or changes you'd like to make. Amendments to the Post-Assessment Property and Liability Insurance Guarantee Association Model Act, that's a mouthful, have been proposed by Representative Lehman. He's interested in cybersecurity and the insurance around that. So I'll turn it over to him again for his remarks on this particular model.
Okay, thank you again, Madam Chair. This is one that this came up at when we had our kind of omnibus. We all have these omnibus insurance bills. Everything kind of goes in. Our department came to us and said, look, the NEIC is changing some of the things around the guarantee fund. They've already done it. Other states have done it through the NEIC. And I think us doing this, putting these cyber type policies as a part of the fund brings us in closer into what's been happening, you might say. So since we have the act out there, I'm just proposing that we bring it up to speed with what we want to do around the policy safeguards for insurance carriers and things like that that have these policies. So make them part of the guarantee fund.
Sounds reasonable to me. Are there any questions or comments from interested parties regarding this model? I don't see anybody frantically waving or any hands popping up. Are there any legislators who would like to make comments with respect to this model? Well, that was way easier than I anticipated. So if anybody has any questions or comments or concerns or proposed changes, please reach out to myself. Representative Lehman or the NCOIL staff. Next up is the Peer-to-Peer Car Sharing Program Model Act. Do any interested parties have any questions or concerns about this model? Oh, hands are popping up. First one up is Ethan Wilson. Go ahead as you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Tice, Vice Chair Hall, members of the committee. Thanks for having me here today. Great to see you all. On behalf of the Open Road Foundation and peer-to-peer car sharing communities across the country, and I will keep this quick. First, I want to thank NCOIL for its leadership on the now very successful peer-to-peer car sharing model. More than 30 states have adopted this model since it was adopted at the fall meeting back in 2019. That was in Austin. I think probably a number of us on this call were there. And second, peer-to-peer car sharing communities, both hosts and guests, your constituents, are real beneficiaries of this model. Consumer protections, regulatory surety and clarity, in ensuring no gaps in coverage have all allowed peer-to-peer car sharing to grow, bringing new opportunities and options of mobility and transportation to urban, suburban, and importantly, rural areas across the country. And lastly, I guess what I would say is many of the issues that spurred growth in peer-to-peer car sharing over a decade ago are just as relevant and important now, which makes this a great time to readopt this model. And really, these issues are more important now than ever, including the cost of personal vehicle ownership, flexible transportation options, and earning a living. These are issues and obstacles to personal financial success that millions of people face every single day. You all know that. The average price of a new car in 2026 is now a staggering $50,000. I remember highlighting facts and figures when we were first discussing peer-to-peer car sharing in this committee back in 2019. In fact, I think it was at the Newport Beach meeting in 2019 where I kind of gave a rundown of peer-to-peer car sharing and some facts and figures around it. And at that time, the average price of a new car was about $38,000. So that was roughly 7 years ago. And $38,000 is a huge sum of money. But unfortunately now, we are in a whole new world when it comes to cost of ownership of a personal vehicle. And as such, peer-to-peer car sharing is more important for more people, more so now than ever. The Open Road Foundation and our nation's peer-to-peer car sharing communities support the readoption and continued success of this model bill. Thank you to NCOIL and members of the Property and Casualty Committee for continuing to support this smart policy. I look forward to readopting this in Boston in July. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. Brad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brad Nail, on behalf of Enterprise Mobility. I just want to point out that when the model was passed, there were quite a few peer-to-peer companies out there, including one that was owned and operated by an insurer. So the landscape has changed quite a bit between that initial adoption and now. I think we have a better understanding of the operations and risks associated with peer-to-peer car rental than we did then. And we think it's worth a discussion over what else the model should address or what should be addressed differently. I am informed that the agenda for the summer meeting is pretty well packed. And so I would maybe just plant the seed that this is a model that might be ripe for readoption until the fall meeting, when we can carve out some time to flesh out the current state of operations and how the model has performed in actuality and what else maybe should be considered in that. And I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Very much appreciate it. Laura.
Hi, thank you all. My name is Laura Mano. Thank you to Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm the Senior Director of Government Relations for Turo, the peer-to-peer car sharing company. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all in support of the current model. We look forward to working together towards its readoption. We believe it has been serving its goal extremely well since its initial passage in 2019 and its update in 2021. To reiterate some of what Ethan already shared, from what I understand, it's one of the most successful models from this body and has been adopted in some form in over 30 states during that time, which includes recent adoptions as recently as this year in the 2026 legislative session. So we believe that broad acceptance and its effectiveness in providing consumer protections, appropriate coverage, certainty for our industry signal that the model is working and should be continued. We haven't seen any language or thoughts about anything specific that might need to be updated, but as the representative of the industry that the model covers, I would just say that we don't believe that there are any changes that need to be made and haven't heard of any specific problems that would need to be addressed. And the fact that it's passed in all of these states, over 30 at this point in some form, without being revisited year after year for changes or anything of the sort, I think is a good signal that the model is working and is effectively regulating the industry. So thank you for the opportunity, of course, available to answer any questions, but we look forward to working together on its readoption.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from legislators? All right, seeing none. Brad, I'll be reaching out to you because I am curious about your commentary given some of the other commentary on here. And everybody, thank you very much for your efforts and your comments and your engagement. I'm grateful. Next up is the Distracted Driving Model Act. Are there any interested parties with comments or questions on this? Good as is. Love it. Thank you. Legislators, any comments or concerns? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Moving on. Next up is the Coronavirus Limited Immunity Model Act. Are there any interested parties with comments or questions on this model? My singular comment would be that we absolutely have to avoid any more coronavirus issues. Any legislators have any comments or questions with respect to this? You guys are making it easy for me. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Next up is the Property Casualty Insurance Modernization Act. Is there anybody, any interested parties with comments or questions on this model? Seeing none, any legislators with questions or comments on this model? Still none. Okay, last up, we have the Property Casualty Flex Rating Regulatory Improvement Model. Do any interested parties have any comments or questions on this one? Wow, you guys just went silent. Any legislators with questions or comments on this model? Seeing none. Thank you, everyone. The discussions we've just had will help us improve our efficiency in Boston in huge ways. Thank you so much. As was mentioned, we are going to be tight on time, and I very much appreciate everybody's efforts on this beautiful, warm, sunny day. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please reach out to the model sponsors, myself, or NCOIL staff so that we're fully prepared as we get into Boston. Are there any other questions? We're moving on to any other business that anyone would like to raise. Still no hands. I'd like to remind everyone about registration for the summer meeting. You'll be receiving an email tomorrow about the early bird rate ending and also room block that recently sold out. We're in the process of obtaining blocks of rooms at nearby hotels, and that information will be provided soon. And we're going to I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Anybody?
So moved.
So move.
Thank you, Paul. Second, anybody?
Second.
Second.
All right. I'll voice vote. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
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 We are officially adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to participate. I am grateful for you. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See you, Lana.